Hey everyone, welcome to SF Garnish Music Production. My name is Justin Ancheta, and today I'm going to be talking about how to create your own sample pack and really get into the organization of how to create a nice folder location that you can easily get back to it for your creative flow. And this is also something that you can create for your friends or even sell in the future. What I have right here is Summer Boot Camp, because we do have our courses coming up here really soon at SF Garnish Music Productions, both in person and online from our boutique studio in North Oakland. So please check it out, sf.garnishmusicproduction.com. Our first summer course is starting June 14th, and also we have some more in August as well. It's 6 days straight of our production course. Let me just kind of get into just a little bit of this. This is West Coast Wednesdays. I'm here every Wednesday talking about Ableton Live music production. Sometimes we get into Logic as well, mixing and mastering, sound design. This is our sign-up page. Ableton Live Production talks about what's inside our 101 and 201 course, which is what's going to happen in the summer program within a 6-day period. We're going to do 6 hours a day of class time, and you just go to the schedule link right here and you scroll down and you find the schedule. I believe it's W, which is the second second Monday of June. And then also we have our August courses coming up here, August 24th and August 15th option. So W, U, and V are the custom codes. This is for Logic, Ableton, mixing and mastering, and sound design. So please check it out when you can. And we're going to get into Ableton Live today. If you have any questions, please comment, and I'll keep checking that periodically, maybe every 10 minutes or so. We stream through Restream, so this is going out to our Twitch channel. It's going out to our YouTube and our Facebook. And thank you to the Garnish Music Network for putting it out worldwide to all of our different locations. We have 8 locations worldwide. All right, let's get into this. So today, what we have here is a session. As you can see, it says 200 BPM. Up here, let me bring this down so you guys can see that. There we go. All right, so it says 200 BPM right up here. And that means that all of my samples in this session is going to be at that 200 or 100 range. And I'm just going to kind of get into just some of the basics of what a sample pack is and what categories you have. So you have one hits and you have loops. And that's the main thing you're going to create. Often the one hits are kick, snare, hi-hat, and loops can be really anything. It could be a synth, it could be a drum loop, it could be a guitar loop. There's a couple different categories and aspects to look at when you're doing a sample pack. One is originality. Let's see here. Genre style, instrumentation, and like I said, the different categories. You also want to make sure that you have samples that range in BPM. Okay, so you might go as low as 50 and as high as 300. I would say the most common BPM for samples would be between 70 and 140, I would say, but it could get up to 200 like this right here. The reason why this is at 200 on this specific song is that I wanted to hear the click at a faster tempo, but this could really be a sample for 100 BPM as well, for that matter. All right, so let's get into this. When you're creating a sample, in regard to originality, just creating a sample of things that have already been created, such as this conga part, I believe, was taken from a sample that was within Ableton already. So I wouldn't really want to just, create a sample from something that's already created. You want to create something uniquely yourself. So something more along the lines of a beatbox or an instrument, or maybe even manipulate the sound yourself to create a new sound from the original sound. And that's where we're going to get into simpler and doing those types of things. resampling is what I'm talking about. All right. I'm going to open up this side menu here. And over here, what we have is my collections are over here, so I can really see the different categories and easily get into things that I want. The same thing goes for your sample packs. So you can put any folder link down here that you want by adding a custom folder and directing Ableton search to exactly that folder. What I created was a folder called SG MIDI clips. SG is for Soul Graffiti, as the studio that we work out of in North Oakland. And these are just a few that I put in here. Now these are MIDI clips. These are drum loops that we can import over a different type of drum sound. Okay, so that's another, I guess, third category is a MIDI clip. So the three that I talked about is a loop, a one hit, and then also these MIDI clips. Okay, so I'm going to put my MIDI clips here, and I also have these Justin sounds for the different samples. Now, some of these I've named correctly, and some of them could be named better. We're going to get into the naming here so that you make sure that you have the key, if there is a key, and also the tempo listed. As you can see here, this one is listed with 200 BPM. This is from the one that we're looking at today. So, but it doesn't have the key. Okay, and I know that this is the key of G minor. So that's something that you'd really want to put into each of your samples. So I'm right clicking on it and I say show in Finder. Now this is an easy way to get into that specific folder. Okay. And common ground, so flute loop, common ground, and this is G minor, and then 200 BPM. Okay, that's often the organization of it, which is the name, the key, and then the BPM in that order. Okay, you also want to make sure that, actually, you know what, let me just change this because these are, well, I guess saying loop is kind of nice because you can kind of see that it's a loop instead of a one hit. Flute loop. All right. So that's an easy way to get in there. And notice how right away it updated the name over here in this folder so that it could be used and just dropped into a new song very easily. So this is the goal, is that you can, bring in your samples quick and easy for future sessions. And then eventually, once you have a lot of them, you can actually, create it as a sample pack yourself to sell, for example. All right. So here I am. I have a song that I created called Common Ground with the project Honey of the Heart. And this is an easy way to create your music and then from a musical idea, come back to it and create your samples. So here's a ukulele bass part. What we want to do is just go ahead and solo that part and listen in. All right. So that with the whole sound. All right. So that's kind of what it sounds like right there. Now, what we want to do is make this a loop, and what you want to do is make sure that it loops in a proper fashion. As you can see, my loop bracket is already listed here, but how you create that is just by selecting the area you want to loop, or just clicking on the upper colored area and it selects that whole loop, and you go Command L, right? That actually took off my loop, but Command L again puts it back on. And that means that it will loop that whole section, okay? And the goal is to listen to how it loops before you export it. Maybe even putting the click track on. All right. Put the click on a little bit quieter there. All right, so it looks like it's looping good. This is an example of something that's already looping good. I should probably get something that isn't so I can help fix those. And you're gonna wanna do that by using your warp markers down here and making sure that your downbeat is really hitting strong if there is something on the downbeat. All right, so now that we have that, so this has bass ukulele, okay? So that's a good probably name for it, ukulele bass. And I'm going to go Command-Shift-R. And I can do the master track because it's soloing that right there. But I can also go to the individual track of bass ukulele, right? And put that in. So here we are, bass ukulele. I want to say render as loop. Yes. Now, this is another important part is a sample rate. Things are often at 44,100 or 4,800. Okay, I'm going to do 4,800 because you can't sample up later. You can always sample back down to 44,100, which is a CD quality. And bit depth of 24. You're going to make sure that this is a WAV or AIF. I'm going to do WAV. We're not going to do an MP3. Okay, it's going to be not high enough quality. MP3s cut off everything above 16K hertz. So even though our ear can't quite hear the difference, or a lot of ears, it is doing a drastic change of cutting off, a lot of the high end, 16K all the way up, to 30K potentially. They say that we may feel as humans, but we can't actually hear. So I want to make sure that that's all in there as best we can, having the WAV instead of MP3. I'm going to say export. Now, this is really the important part is making sure you know where your file is, right? So I have my Justin sounds and here are my loops. And this is where the naming comes in handy, right? So save as. Now, this is the ukulele bass. Actually, I'm going to put the word bass at the front because people searching for bass, it'll just be more visible. Bass ukulele, and I'm gonna say this is G minor. Actually, the name of this common G minor, 200 BPM. So people know the key G minor, and it's pretty much staying there the entire time. And then I'm going to go ahead and save that. And rendering loops is pretty quick of a process just because it's such a small file. This is a little bit longer of a loop. And it sometimes doesn't have to be that full length, but there is some variation going on from the start to finish. So right away when we go back in here, we should have that pop up into our folder. We may have to go one more time back into it. And let's go to B for bass, and there it is right there. Now notice how that came in a little bit on the soft side. Okay, so that's actually something that I might want to create a little bit louder, of a stronger loop. And one thing that I'm noticing is that actually, let me bring this over so you guys can see all of this. There we go. You can see the whole Ableton session now. So notice how my mix, it has this at -10, right? So that's actually coming in at -10, and we don't really want to bring that in negative because we want it at the most optimum level of sound. So I'm going to bring that to 0. And let's see how that's sounding. All right, so definitely louder. And one more thing you can do to increase the gain is by going into the sample itself right? And increase the gain there. All right, so it looks like it's at -6. Another way to bring that back. Yep, cool. So this one actually, I sidechained to my kick, and it's not sidechained right now. So that pop in the top of it is not ideal. If you wanted to make sure that the side chaining engaged right here when we're listening to it. Now let's listen and watch the side chain. All right, so it is engaging a little bit there on the Alley Cat kit. Cool. Just want to make sure that that's there. All right, so we have the volume higher now. I'm going to go ahead and go Command-Shift-R. All of my settings for loop and everything else is the same. And you can go ahead, and the name is already there from before. I'm going to go Save, and I say Replace. And the idea is we want to make sure that over here now that this waveform looks better than that. That's a little bit too small of a waveform because people are going to have to increase the gain. And when they increase the gain, they're also increasing all of the extra little jarble that they may not want. All right. So this just did redo. And I'm going to go back in and see how that's looking now. All right. So definitely looking better now. That's like a good loop, how it should look. Now that's a softer volume because what I have is my output is listed here. Okay. So my headphones are turned down and it's in a separate queue out. This is something that you want to be able to do if you're doing a live show and listening to samples yourself. But I could actually put it in just the same as my master out, and the volume's going to come in at full volume, right? And as you can see, that's got some volume there. All right. So I'll just keep that in the same queue out just because we're going to be listening to it together in that way. So we just put our loop of a bass in. Let's go ahead and do a sample now. Now we have this beatboxing going on right here. Let's go ahead and solo this. Bringing the volume up so we can hear it. Now this could be a loop. It could also be a Midi clip, and it can also be a one hit. Since we just did a loop, I'm going to go ahead and take a one hit. Okay, so now we have a couple different sounds here. And one way to test this out is to go ahead and just use a simpler. I'm going to create a new Midi track by Command-Shift-T. And I have my simpler and my instruments up here just because I love just coming in and dropping this into a new channel myself. And what we want to do is take that sample and drop it in to simpler. It's as easy as dragging and dropping. And we're going to slice that up. Now right away when it slices up, it has these spots right here. You can zoom in and see where it's splicing itself. You can also move these to your own location, right? And you can also make new ones. Right, double clicking and creating it. So, and I'm going to go ahead and notice how we're just kind of testing out each one of these. So this is kind of a kick, snare, and then hi-hat, right? So that's what we're going to probably do, is just take the exact same kick and snare, hi-hat, and just cut that up into its own sample. So I just did that by Command-Shift-E by highlighting it and then cutting it. And then what I want to do is make a nice fade out so it doesn't have any extra little variation there. So that's probably what I want for my first sample, which is the kick. Okay, and I'm going to go Command-Shift-R. Oh, let's make sure that we are soloing that track, as a matter of fact. Okay, so we've soloed it. Now this is a one hit. So this will not be on loop mode. It is going to be a wave. And also, let's just make all of our samples converted to mono. It's just going to be a smaller file that way, etc. You can also normalize it and it brings it up in volume. But that's also, you can do that the ways that I just said previously. If you're just joining us, we're doing how to create a sample pack today, your own sample pack and organization. So I'm going to export this, and right away I'm already in that same folder, which is convenient. And now I can call this kick beatbox. This would just be 200 BPM. It's still nice to know the BPM because sometimes it can, get into a kind of a warped mode if you get too far away from the BPM that it's made in. Now, doing those samples is pretty fast, right? That one's done. Going to the next one. I'm also making sure that there's a little bit of space up here on the front side. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut that and just keep it really simple. All of my settings are there, right? Converting to mono is important. And this is then the hi-hat beatbox. Hi-hat beatbox. And then our snare. I'm going to give a little bit more space on the very front of that. I'm going to go Command-4, and it actually allows it to just kind of move around to the exact spot I want, right? Off grid. And that's pretty good. And then Command-4 again brings it back to grid. I'm going to go Command-Shift-R. All my settings are there. And putting this into its right category. Now notice how my workflow just sped up because it already knows where my location is, right? I'm in the Justin Sounds, which is where my sample pack name is, and then it's going to be snare beatbox. All right. Now, I just am putting this all into the one folder. I'm going to make sure you guys see this while I talk about it. So here are my sounds, and I put this actually in my splice folder area so that eventually I can share this around with folks. Now, some of these should be in specific categories compared to others, right? And the two categories that I would probably like to make is categories of loops and categories of one hits. Now, the one hits could actually say all your snares, all of your kicks, etc. So that's just something that you want to be able to kind of get into this eventually. So as you can see, the sample is right here, ready to go. Okay, so that is how you create your samples. And when you want to use them, your shortcut code, I added the folder directly into the area to utilize them right here. right? All right. It looks like these two right here did not get in to... This is a common mistake that I'm just going to fix right away here. So the kick beatbox and the snare beatbox. Did the snare work? Nope. Neither did that. All right. So when you go too fast sometimes, you just got to go slow down and do it again. Okay. So let's just go through this process slowly here and make sure that everything's working as planned. And Command Shift R. I see it's on ukulele bass. Okay, so what we want to do is we could go to master here, or we can also go to beatbox, right? So really making sure that your render track is in the appropriate area. I might as well go to my master because there are some things on my master chain that I kind of liked. You don't want to compress and normalize things too much. So this is going to be the kick. And replace. All right, right away, that is there. Great. So that's a simple way to remedy if you accidentally don't have the correct track, right? Master track is a good save all right there. Like I said, though, you may not want to compress and have your mastering effects on. Converting to mono, this is going to be the hi-hat. Replacing. And again, same thing. And replacing. All right. So that's a simple way to fix that. Make sure that these are here. All right. Now what we want to do is make sure that snare is there. And there it is too. All right. Let's make sure that this is closed. Other things are calling me. That's not meant to be there. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure that we can utilize these one hits and bring them in to a drum rack. Okay, Command T is going to be an audio track, but we want to do Command Shift T for a MIDI track. And what we're going to do is just go ahead and bring in our drum rack and test out our new sounds. Now, these already have drums on them, so we might just want to go into a basic drum rack that's completely empty. Okay. And now go to our folder and drag and drop our different areas, right? So we have our kick here, we have our hi-hat, we have our snare in the beatbox. Now, I often have these in specific areas on the pad. We're going to bring that back up to right here just because I'm used to them being in certain areas. The snare being right there. And the hi-hat, I'm finding, is empty still. So let's make sure that hi-hat is sounding good. Okay. Master, export. Snare beatbox. We're going to go to hi-hat. Replace. All right. So going back into our drums and just testing that out. And making our own drum sample from this. All right, and now we're going to make sure that this is our highlighted area. All right, So now those are samples. Now you really want to make sure that these are at the transposition that you want. This looks like it's at +4. So we want that to be in the same key. Great. So there you have it. Now, if you want to mess around with these samples with Simpler, I would really encourage you to do something similar to what I was talking about before. Okay, so Command-Shift-T. Let's bring our Simpler in again to demonstrate this. Instruments, Simpler. And now we have our new sample that we can just drop in here. Okay, and in the Simpler, you can then kind of customize how much your attack wants to be in there. You can do this also on your drum rack as well. But what's nice about this, let's go in and make sure that we have this soloed. Right, it's pretty easy to change the pitch, right? With your slide pad. And if you wanted to then create a separate sound from there, then you'd want to do a resample. I'm going to not do this with this specific example because it is a one hit. And I think that I want to create a one hit from a really unique sound and go in that direction. I'm noticing that there's a lot of lag time on my pad right now. Maybe it's because I'm streaming live, but I think I have a 32 gig RAM. I should be fine. But something you might want to check by Command comma is your sample rate when that happens. I find that 128 is often a nice way to be able to sample without any lag time. But then sometimes going up and getting the buffer size higher often does that. All right, so it's a little bit better. Let's do that one more time. Bring it back down. Right, -15, -18, pretty close. All right, let's see how that does. Testing that, good. Cool. So that's a quick way to be able to get our sample working and testing it in Simpler again. Now, there are some sounds that I would like to make more uniquely, right? To make the sample pack just that much better. And one thing that we could even do is take a sound that's already been created, right? These are different samples in the pack already. Oud. Now, and what we can do is resample things. And this is that flute that we were initially talking about. Let's go ahead and just drop that. Yep, right in here. Okay, so the flute loop, common ground, G minor, 200 BPM, automatically updates. Let's change where my head is so you guys can see this. All right. Let's make sure you guys can see all of my screen in this mode here. Let's take out that, clean it up a little bit. Now what I want to do is, we're in Simpler. It's named the flute loop common ground. And then we go to slice mode. Now this is where you can then start creating your specific sounds by actually playing just the playing it in slice mode. Now I'm using the push to trigger that. So it's a great quick way. There's obviously many countless MIDI devices. The Akai MPK Mini is a great start off, and I still utilize that mixed with the push 2 and the FCB 1010 for my live looping show and Ableton use in the studio. I will be getting into that actually next week, is how to utilize the FCB 1010 if you're playing instruments. So tune in next Wednesday for West Coast Wednesdays, 11 to 12. All right, so now going back in here, and let's clean this up a little bit. Okay. Now we don't need all of our return tracks here, our master track, our mixing input, all of that can be down lower, master lowered as well. All right, so now this has been named the loop that we did. And what I want to do is put some effects onto this channel, okay, to make this uniquely a new instrument, a new sound. Let's go ahead and just get into some effects that we've customized up here. Great way to do this is to save your work in your custom folders and save yourself tons of time. So I believe Fade to Gray could be a pretty cool one. All right, making that a little bit different. Interesting, this should not be here. If you ever have something in your custom folders, you can always just clear the selected and it will not show up there again. Right, there it is. Okay, so what else can we put on here? Reverse. Let's reverse the sound here a little bit. So as we get into this, let's go ahead. So right away, this isn't even sounding like the original flute at all. You can put some octaver on there and do a lot of crazy things about this. What else should we do? I'm going to go ahead and just briefly check out the live stream as I play. So the common ground, what I did is I stripped out the vocals and I got all the backing tracks into its own waveform so that I can then put it through the Pioneer DJ DDJ SP2, super simple and cheap DJ system. And I'm going to play this for you while I check out some of your guys' comments, and we'll go from there. Check it out. All right. So once you have it in that form, right, you can then bring it in and start looping and DJing from your DJ setup. Right. Right, so all of your different customizations and your manual loops and auto loops of a full song can also be utilized. But what's nice is to have the customization of per instrument. One of the reasons why I wanted is to share a piece of the kind of the end product of how it went together is that that end product could be at the top of your loop pack so that people understand what's inside of it and what they can grab from it. And also, it kind of reminds me that the banjo, for example, is also another instrument that we could probably do some good loops from. But let's go ahead and finish this idea of the flute. Right? Just some interesting sounds from this flute. And what we want to do now is let's look at the routing of this and bring this into a new track. So Command R, I'm going to go sampler, resample. Okay. And what we're going to do is bring this from the track that we have, right? 22 flute loop. And we're going to record on this side. And this is going to send. Notice how we're in the drums all. That's unnecessary. But we're just kind of doing this for demo purposes. And we want to send this to the resampler track. Resampler, there it is. My head keeps getting in the way. All right. You guys can see that. All right, just a heads up to you guys, we have our summer sessions coming up here. So check it out. It's coming out June 14th, and in August we have our 6 days, 36 hours and 6 days. So 6 hours a day of courses in Ableton, Logic, mixing and mastering. So check that out when you can. It's at SF Garnish Music Production School based in North Oakland, and we have online courses as well, but we are doing the summer course in person. So let's get back to our session here. And West Coast Wednesdays, I'm here doing demos every Wednesday from 11 to 12. And we're working on creating your own sample pack. And right now we're taking our flute sound, completely warping it up and resampling it into the sampler here. Let's go ahead and hear that. So let's go ahead and I just want to hear that alone with the click track so I can play it kind of to a tempo. So I'm soloing those tracks and pressing play and record. All right. So obviously pretty random there, but just an example of being able to kind of throw some things out there. Now what we have here is we have the MIDI track listed here, but what we captured here was a stereo track coming directly from there that has all of the effects. So even if something changes up here, these have the effects in there. So let's listen to that. So if we wanted to just to take a sample from this one area, we could just take a section of this and loop it. Make sure that we have the right location that we want. Loop that again. Loop that. And then Command-Shift-R, and I'm going to say master track, convert to mono, yes, and loop, render as loop. I'm actually not doing this to the BPM, so let's not do that. This will just be kind of like a one-hit export, and this will be called, so, flute crazy effects. Just so this is just an idea of something, and bring it in that way. All right, so what we've done here is we've expanded out our sample pack quite a bit, right? We've expanded it out over here to where we can then have our shortcut and all of our extra things that we've created today. And there it is. And that's the original. So these are all the different samples of the gourd we did. Now, these other samples right here, this is a tres. So we are trying to create some unique samples. Now these are just one hits that I did. The reason why I liked this specifically is because when you can bring this into simpler, let's go ahead and just do that. It really has a cool sound to it. So tres, dropping that in. Okay, so let's just even see, what does it sound like? We just brought this harmony tres over what we played of the other instrument. All right, the tres is finally coming out. Just so the computer can keep up, I'm just going to go ahead and make a whole new simpler track because it was getting confused with the older one right there. We were hearing. Let's make sure that we have our tres in this track now. Justin Sounds, harmonic tres, and slice. Good. Now this is coming in -12. You can always bring this up to 0 nominal. So this one, kind of nice is that you can make a tres not even sound like a tres when you start doing the bends on it, right? So just really, the sky's the limit on where you can go with samples out there, right? Let's go ahead and make that. Our sample. Cool. All right. So if you guys have any questions, please check us out, sf.garnish music production. We'd be happy to give you a free intro. We have a free 30-minute intro call where we can talk music and where you're at with your production. Take advantage of that by emailing sf@garnishmusicproduction.com. And as I said before, we do have our summer courses coming up here starting in June 14th in all of our different digital audio workstations, Ableton, Logic, Pro Tools, sound design and mixing and mastering classes for our 36-hour summer course in 6 days. starting June 14th. And we have 2 more courses of our summer boot camp in August. So please check that out at SF Garnish Music Production School. We'd be happy to answer your questions over our 30-minute free consultation. And I'll be doing these courses weekly on Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And just a kind of a recap of what we did today in the past hour is that I'll actually go in here and just create a new add folder. And you make sure that you find your location that you want. Okay. So I was going in here and sounds, right? You want that as a separate folder. You open that and sounds is there now. Now these are all the different packs of sounds, right? That I've downloaded from Splice and I want them to be easily accessed. And I can even reorganize this, right? To even come up as high as possible so that it's there. Okay. So what we did a custom pack here. These are some samples that I'm creating from previous songs and samples that I like currently. And then also MIDI clips. This is the last part that I haven't gotten through. But why don't we do a brief portion of this for the last 5 minutes here. Okay. So when you have a beatbox, for example, which we have here, let's go ahead and get into this one. So here's a loop and let's go to grid and let's find out what type of loop we can do. So that's actually the loop that we've actually put in the song. I can see a little marker there. So I'm going to loop that up and solo that. All right. So right there, what we can do is we can then, from this, we can do all of these features that are listed here. Slice to new MIDI track, convert to drums. Right. Now, one of the reasons why we'd like to convert this to drums is because we want to take the groove from this. So when you convert this to drums, shows up right below and it has a generic drum pattern and sound. Actually, I would say just sound. Now, sometimes it gets it wrong. Notice how it's stacked right here. I'm going to make sure that that West Coast Wednesdays goes away. Let's see here. There he goes. You guys can see that a little bit better now. All right. Let's get that nice and big and fold these up. Okay, so what we have here is our folded drums, and our kick and snare is not supposed to happen at the same time. So I'm going to take the snare out there, kick there. This looks like it was picked out the wrong thing. Let's see how that sounds. And I'll solo this. All right, so you can actually quantize this. And some of these hits are that fast little stutter I don't really like, so I'll take those out. Now, something that I did though is I quantized to the grid, and if you really want to have the groove and the pattern of specifically the instrument and how it was played, you'd want to keep it. So I just did Control Z 3 times. So this is the actual feel that was originally there. Now, once we have that feel, we can export the MIDI clip. Okay. Now what we're doing with this is we are exporting what the MIDI tempo is and how it is jiving with everything else. So let's go ahead and transition folder snares. All right. Let's go ahead and create our MIDI here. MIDI clip. And as a matter of fact, I already have something. So let's, instead of creating something brand new, let's just make sure that we have everything that we want here. So SG MIDI, right? Show in Finder. So this is in our Ableton All, Sample Packs, SG MIDI. So instead of creating a new folder, let's make sure we just put it in the appropriate folder. I've learned the hard way. Oh, and make sure that this also is highlighted the exact portion that we want and not that extra area. So Command E, cutting that. So it's just this. Right-clicking, exporting MIDI clip. And I remember now it is in our Ableton All and SG MIDI clips. And this is going to be Beatbox Common Ground 200 BPM. All right. So now I just clicked it from a different folder back in, and that MIDI clip is there, Beatbox Common Ground. So just to test this out, we can then go Command-Shift-T and create a new MIDI track and just put on a completely different custom drum. Let's go ahead and get this one in here. This is one of my favorites. Not sure what it's going to sound like, but our goal is that we're going to take our MIDI clip that we just put in and drop it right in. Say yes, and let's solo that. So there it is. If things are sounding abrasive like the hi-hat, you can always decrease that volume. And also, if something's listed in the wrong area, possibly you can unfold. So instead of taking that snare, you can move it up to a completely different snare. Right, and then going back in and customizing again. Right, taking out the hits that I didn't like there, the hi-hat. So just like that, you went from the beatbox sound, right? To then finding a way to bring it in to a completely different sound. All right, so that's how you can organize your MIDI clips and create your own. Obviously, you want to also learn really just how to use your different grooves that have already been presented to you, your saved templates, and your clips, right, that are already presented to you. They're all organized in BPM. And you can always just type in, right, a BPM up here, and it should give you all of the ones at 130 BPM or 140, etc. So just having these shortcuts of how to search for specific MIDI clips is really going to help you out a lot. So I really encourage you to check out utilizing that yourself. And if you have any other questions, please contact us. Our telephone number is 510-463-4769. And you can email us at sf@garnishmusicproduction.com. The summer courses are coming up, so stay in touch with us and sign up for our email list. We have free sample packs and sounds and meetups weekly, right? We have this free hour course going on every Wednesday for all of you guys from 11 to 12. We have a Beer and Beats meetup Tuesdays, 6 to 9. And all this information is on sf.garnishmusicproduction.com. So thanks again for being with us. My name's Justin, and I'll see you again really soon. Take care.